you're not moving with us constantly, though, yeah, time will move in our favor. They'll never know, but they just keep on asking when we're down here hurting from a broken heart, trying to figure out how this is real, 'cause you're never coming back down. You belong to the stars and the clouds. Goodbyes, good times, and all we hear is all for you. Oh, if you didn't say your goodbyes, don't worry, love will power through. I'm sorry that I never replied. How was I to know this would be our last goodbye? We can't look at the world with tears in our eyes. Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Just think of the good times you've left behind, and all we hear is all for you. No, if you didn't say your goodbyes, don't worry, love will power through. No, no, 'cause you're never coming back down. You belong to the stars and the clouds.
To learn about French wines is to learn something of the geography of France. You will learn where the town of
Welcome everyone here at World Water Week, those physically here in Stockholm, thank you very much, and also those online as well. Thank you for joining our session on ensuring water security, sustainable future through education, innovation and partnerships. My name is Jakhya Rahman-Corey and I'm the director of the Swarovski Foundation, and that's actually the first time we've been here at World Water Week because we're actually celebrating the Water School, which is celebrating 25 years. And I'll tell you more about the Water School in a moment. But maybe if I can set the scene of what today's panel and the session would look like. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about the Swarovski Foundation, the reason why water is so essential in our mandate. But also you'll hear real stories from collaborators and our partners later on today with our panelists. But we also want this to be interactive. So later you'll see a Mentimeter. I think you've seen this a few times through the World Water Week sessions. Not only is it to ask questions, both online and in person, but we also want to hear your thoughts, your reflections. Maybe there's a story that resonates with you that you want to share your experience as well. So we do want to kind of have that interactive part together later. So let me begin with who is the Swarovski Foundation and what is our work all about? So Swarovski, you may have heard the crystal company, started in 1895. And the founder, his name was Daniel Swarovski. And he truly believed that, we can be successful, but we should look after our community and the people around us. And that essence of giving back is in the DNA of the organization. So in 2013, the Swarovski Foundation started because we wanted to, with all this philanthropy and giving back, we wanted to organize ourselves. Because a big part is, can we be accountable for the work we're doing with our partners? And so with this journey, we reflected, what are the key issues we're trying to address? And as you can see here are some inequality statistics that unfortunately within and across countries remains inequality. The fact that 129 million young girls don't have access to schools. The fact that when we think about the creative industry, we think about the artisanal sector, it employs 2/3 of women. But are their rights protected? And then, of course, water. The fact that we have less than 1% of clean drinking water that has to be shared by 8 billion people. How do we protect and preserve this? So this is why when we look at that statistics, we ask ourselves, how does the Swarovski Foundation look to address this? So our mission statement is to promote sustainable livelihoods through education to reduce inequality. Let me please break that down to you. If inequality is the end result, if that's what we're trying to reduce, what are the tools, the means that can help address this? And we feel one of the biggest factor is sustainable livelihoods. So if you look at SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, if you give the empowerment to individuals to make decisions as to what jobs they want, what further education they want, gives the empowerment to then decide, again, kind of what livelihoods and life they want to have. But how? And that's why we use the tool education. There's always a saying that education is the wealth that no one can take from you. It's so essential. Whether it's formal education, informal or non-formal types of education, this can spur our lives, and I'm sure everyone in the audience will say the same. There's something that may have inspired you in the work that you do now, or inspire you in the way you live your life. And that's why we feel that education is such a huge red thread. So whilst that's our mission statement, we have 3 key areas of focus: equity, creativity, and water. So if I start with equity, we want to help and improve those who have the most marginalized and empower marginalized groups. When we think about young girls, as I shared the earlier statistics, when we think about refugee groups, what can we do to help and support and address their needs? The other aspect is creativity. And we want to advance creative talent. Because the beauty of creativity is it can answer a lot of the challenges that we see today by being thoughtful in that consideration. And actually one of the programs that we actually deliver is Creatives for Our Future. And you'll hear from Charlotte later on. She's one of our alumni. But let me just share with you what is Creatives for Our Future. Creatives for Our Future is our partnership with the United Nations Office for Partnerships. And it was in 2020 we said, there's a lot of learnings because of the pandemic. And we realized that the creative industry was really hard hit as well. And many young people weren't getting access within that creative industry. But again, going back to what I said earlier about creativity can answer a lot of those challenges. So we put a challenge forward saying, can your creative idea address a social or environmental issue? And if so, apply. All around the world, we take submissions because we want to represent your ideas wherever it may be in the world. And we have these great innovations that shared how to address the water issue, how to maybe exchange in language with sign language. How can you listen to music if you're deaf, but you can feel the vibrations? These are just some of the innovations, and you can learn more with the Swarovski Foundation Creatives for Our Future, and we have that all on the website. But you're going to hear more directly from Charlotte, her personal experience. And then, of course, water, what brings us all here today. Going back to the inception of the Swarovski Foundation and the heritage, whilst the Swarovski Foundation's been here since 2013, we have this water school program. Because we truly believe, and I'm sure everyone here and everyone online knows that having access to water is a human right. Because there are so many layers to having access to water. And so with that, it started in the 2000s in Austria, where the company is based and started. And they said, how can we inform young people that may have access to water, but the importance of water? The fact that maybe learning through experiments, hands-on experience, understand the privilege that they may have with the access to water, but they have to protect it. Because as you know, glaciers are melting. And then it further advanced, and we started a water school in India, where access to water and sanitation is limited. Then we went further to Uganda, we went to Australia, and also Brazil. And you will hear from Raquel later on specifically what's happening in the Amazon and how we're working with the Water School. But further to the water agenda, as I mentioned with the Water School, we're also looking at how do we advance it further with different groups of people. And so we were looking at universities that were really addressing the water issue. And that's why we were really happy that yesterday we announced with IHE Delft a partnership that we're supporting 3 master students from the Global South so that they have access to key education in this incredible university. But that opportunity means that with that learning, they can take and share that within their local communities. And how also by peer-to-peer network is so essential. We realize again from this conference, networking is such a key part of how we can build our ideas. And you'll hear from Sundus later, who's not only an alumni, but also works at IHE Delft too. So you'll hear from them later, but I just wanted to give you that landscape of the foundation's efforts. We also want to share with you where we are in the world. We do feel it's important to be global because, like water, we have no boundaries. We have to be able to connect with one another, understand different cultures, understand the challenges that are faced, and again, addressing the inequality piece. So I'm happy to say that we can't do this alone. We have to do this with partnerships. And that's why since our inception, we've reached more than 2 million people around the world with more than 80 partnerships in 93 countries. So again, we are so thankful to all of our partners and collaborators who make the real change of not the global issue, but also addressing the local issues too. And I'm going to pause and I'm going to share next a video that really highlights the Swarovski Foundation Water School program and marking its 25-year anniversary. No worries, we'll just have a moment pause. Okay, so we'll come back to the video. Maybe we'll end with that video potentially. Hopefully we can load that in the background. So whilst that's being loaded, then let's move forward with the panel. So with further ado, I'd like to introduce a wonderful panel. We've got our Raquel, Charlotte, and Sundus. We'll also share a bit of an introduction of themselves and their brilliant work. Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Hi.
So, prior to me asking maybe the formal questions, please first introduce yourselves. Raquel.
Okay. Hello, hello. Yes. So I'm Raquel. I come from Brazil. I actually right now live in a city called Manaus. It's in the north of Brazil. I always say it's not an obvious place when people come from Brazil to say it's from there. It's a place, it's the capital of the state of Amazonas, and it's a huge city that can only be reachable by either boat or plane. So it's very isolated somehow. And yeah, I have been working in this field, in this social impact field, for about almost 20 years now, always in the Amazon. So it's important to say that I'm not a water expert, but I do work with water experts. But I can say that maybe my field of expertise is like to making things happening on the field in the Amazon. And that's a bit where I'm coming from today to speak. And also that I'm not very used to be on the stage. I'm usually the person that is on the field doing the work. So let's see how it goes. And I'm so happy and so thankful for being here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. But that's why it's so important to have your voice, because we want to hear what you're doing locally and behind the scenes that we don't always see. So thank you, Raquel.
Great.
Hi, my name is Charlotte Werth. I am from Germany, but I'm based in London. I've been working with pigment-producing bacteria for the last 8 years. I'm going to dive deeper into that and explain a little bit more about it later on. But I'm incredibly passionate about it, and it was part of my work during the Creatives for a Future program with the Swarovski Foundation. I'm recently have started a part of a community laboratory, which is called the Living Fabrics Lab, where accessibility to laboratory spaces for everyone is given, and I'm incredibly excited about it, and it's a beautiful partnership, and I'm going to get into that later as well. I'm very happy to be here, and been speaking with this amazing group of panelists.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. And I can see your enthusiasm when you talk about creativity. I love it. That's amazing. Sundus.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sundus. I'm originally from Iraq, but I'm based in the Netherlands. I work at IHE Delft. It's like the largest institute for water education. My role is more like engagement, partners engagement, capacity development projects with a background of water management and governance. This has put me here, but as my colleague mentioned here, that most of the time I'm behind the stage putting people on the stage. So I will take a little bit of time while speaking, but I hopefully that will give you more insights from the ground, as I came from Iraq with like the passion to study water as a person who was affected by conflict and access to water was one of the issues. And then later on, when I started at IHE, giving me more passion to continue in the capacity development. Thank you. And being here, it's like a privilege, we can say, and sharing like insights with the very nice colleagues that they will share a very nice stories as well. Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing. And it's great to have you on stage, not behind the scenes as well. Fantastic. I also just wanted to say that whilst we have we've introduced ourselves, I did want to put in the background the Mentimeter scan as well. As I mentioned, it's not only just questions that can be posed to the panel, but it's also showing your reflections. We do really want to hear your voice as well. How do you see your role? How do you see that we can participate? How can we collaborate? Or it's just again, a story that you want to share. So I'll leave that in the background. Feel free to add anything at any time. And that also goes to our online community as well. So thank you again for sharing, who you are. But I want to go a bit deeper. I want to always go back to the purpose, because in this work, there has to be a lot of heart to then determine that I'm going to go ahead with this. I'm going to focus on something that is very challenging, but I care about it and I want to do something in your unique ways. So I want to start with what brought you to this purpose, Raquel?
Okay, so actually I'm from the south of Brazil, and as soon as I was studying business, was nothing to do what I'm doing now, but I started to work with climate change back then. And then as soon as I stepped in the Amazon for the first time, I don't know, it's something you cannot really explain, but it's a call. Mm-hmm. And actually, when you think of climate change, and I knew that was already my field of work, you cannot think about it without the Amazon biome. Like, it's central to climate regulation, to the water cycle in the whole planet, and especially in Brazil. And what I noticed is that we know so little about it. Usually you see the Amazon as being this like green carpet of forest, and it actually is. Just the state I live in, Amazonas, it's bigger than Germany, France, and Portugal put together, and it's 98% conserved. Right. But what people usually don't know is that there are so many, it's around 5,000 only in the state of Amazonas, traditional communities living there and protecting this forest. So if we want climate change to be tackled, we need to address Amazon conservation. And for that to happen, we need to look to the communities that live there. And I mean, that the purpose came actually like talking to people on the field, having coffee in the houses, and I understood that I had somehow a position in that by having had access to education and being able to do this bridge among different contexts. And then I found somehow my purpose, that is basically like bringing dignified life, helping somehow to bring more dignified lives to these people that are actually protecting the forest for us, doing such an important service for us.
Absolutely.
And that keeps me aligned and working, and just being there doing our work. And for already 10 years in partnership with the Swarovski Foundation, doing our water school work in one of the most challenging areas of all this context I told you. So we're there, we keep there.
I appreciate that. And if I can just echo, I think what was really special, I had the wonderful opportunity in 2023 to visit. And I think, like you said, there's a sense of community, the sense of calling. And what you've just said is, when meeting the community and the elders and the way that they were expressing the love for nature and how it's so ingrained in their DNA, there's something in your soul that just changes. So I can resonate what you're saying, and it's what a beautiful calling that you do the work that you do as well. So thank you. Charlotte, please tell us about yourself and the purpose of what brought you into the work that you do now.
Yes, I've been thinking about what purpose, like what would describe this the most. And I think throughout my whole life of working with pigment-producing bacteria and working in material innovation, accessibility is a big part of it. So while designers in my wider community can have the opportunity of using their education for criticizing systems and rethinking systems, they also, of course, can choose not to do that. And so I think they have a really big impact of implementing material sciences for alternative production processes. But even in higher education, accessibility is not always there. So while it was difficult for me to find accessible laboratories and accessible knowledge for biodesign, when I started, I now want to be part of sharing that knowledge and enabling other people to have that accessibility as well, to just have a starting point and not feel frightened of starting with material sciences and different production processes. So I think purpose is a really big part of why I am in the field. Accessibility is a big part of why I'm in the field where I am. And the other thing I would like to mention, I know it might be perceived in two ways, but beauty. I think material innovation is beautiful. I get so excited about it. The way that microorganisms grow, their own way of communicating, studying those is beautiful. So it's not only a need, it's also something passionate. It's something beautiful to be studying.
Absolutely. And I think that kind of connects back to nature, I think there's the beauty of just how nature just thrives if we let it thrive, to watch that beauty. So that really does connect, because when you do think about the fashion industry and how that's contributing to maybe the negative impact, you're addressing the fact that how do we protect our waterways using this pigment dye and using a new way of thinking. And this is why creativity is important. Yeah. But again, linking that nature, I think that's stunning as well, and beautiful, like you said. Thank you. Sundus.
Maybe I will go a little bit far, very old. I came from a country which is considered the oldest civilization built on water, we can say. So I was very attached to water. Even my background was not on water. I can say it freely here that starting of a telecommunication engineer, facing a very struggled kind of environment because of the conflict and war, and I'm continue what my colleague here mentioned, but in a very different perspective when it comes to water, because accessibility to water in urban areas, sometimes we say it is like a fact. You can open the tap and you will have it, but we don't think when struggle, conflict, armed conflict, even it's natural hazards appeared or come, what will happen? So I was part of these vulnerable communities, and I saw how water shaped lives like livelihood. Access to water is not an easy thing. And later on, when I started working as a volunteer in humanitarian sector, I was going to the villages and like local communities in rural areas. I came from the city. So I heard more stories how they are struggling even more than us. So that was shaped my, let's say, my life in water. I moved from telecommunication to focusing and studying water management. And from there, I put myself as I need to do something. And then later on, I was thinking, and yeah, I consider like access to water is dignity. We need to save our dignity because as my colleague mentioned here, like having access to water is a human right. And we need to highlight this point. And I think in this kind of conferences, we need to show to the world that our commitment to access to water is not only that having affordable, accountable, and access for quality of water. It's beyond that. What we define as safe water, you just like Google it and you will have different definition. But like you need to think about the people who don't have access to water just like as quantity, but even like access to it, have it as 1 liter or 2 liters per day. Sometimes we take WHO 140 or 120 liter per day. No, it's beyond that. 1 liter per day is not enough. So we need to think about this. That's start my passion in water. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you're really highlighting, again, the access, the fact that not everybody has, and there are different circumstances, you know, whether it's environmental, maybe there's conflict. How do we address those? And so I'm sure I'll come back to you for some of your thoughts. Yeah. So you've all shared your purpose, and you know, I kind of want to go back to you're here, the roles that you do, and I've always said, and I've said earlier, education is that thread. Can you share maybe whether it's a formal or informal or non-formal type of education that you've had that again helped leverage where you are now? Maybe there was something that inspired you, or maybe it was something that you read or you learned, or there was an experience again that you saw. Can you share a bit more of how that in itself has got to where you are now?
Yeah, I feel I come from a very privileged, not privileged like rich, but I had access to education in my went to all the until my master's. I even did my master's here in Sweden, which is funny. But I think that put me in the role of like, maybe I have to do something, like knowing all this context and being in contact with this scenario, these communities, and knowing that there's so much we can do in collaboration, and then it's even like the partnerships part of our conversation. I feel it's even for me, it's like a have to, you know, and in the sense of what we do. So I want to bring back to the water aspect of the work. So the communities we work in, they live in direct connection to water. So they are actually by the water. We call, these are traditional communities, and they're indigenous communities. There's the quilombola that are the reminiscence of the slavery in Brazil. And there's also the riverine communities. That is actually, it means people that live by the river. And that said, their whole lives is designed around how the rivers go down and go up, and how this influences their subsistence and what they do. And in this sense, it's so funny because they are used to it, you know, that this is just how their lives happen, and they kind of design, like naturally do everything around water. And us coming from outside, me coming from outside and having this view of like, this is not so given, you know, sometimes you take for granted. And I think in this sense, education, it's like, how can we exchange? It's about exchange. It's about being in relation. And I think this relation of like me coming from outside, and I'm taking it personally, but like we are a great team, and there's so much I can share about it, brings this exchange and can create something new, can create a new knowledge. And we do work with very formal education. We have a book. So it's the Water School book it's an overarching methodology that came from the global design, and we adapted to the Amazon reality. So this is the formal education, but there's the whole non-formal education that is more related to the community, that we create actions together with the community, and that helps also shaping all the rest of the work we do with bringing infrastructure and whatever we bring as novelty to the community. But education is actually the base that holds everything together, you know. In this sense, I think that's actually the biggest thread that ties and weaves our work on the field and my connection to this work.
And I think what you've really highlighted here as well is that education went both ways. The fact that you listen to the community, and I think that's so essential, because again, we may have different resources that we're trying to pull together to try and create impact, but you took your role and you consider yourself outside, but when I went to the community, they don't see you as that. They see you very much integrated in the community. They see you as one, which is beautiful. But that's because it's taken you time. You were very patient, you listened, and your knowledge actually came from listening to what they said. Was, again, like you said, it was for thousands of years that they've actually practiced this protection of water. How do we continue that as well? And I think that's the beauty of what you've just shared, that we can also take away when it comes to education. How can we actually listen to the communities on the ground?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Thank you. Charlotte.
Yes. Such a beautiful answer, by the way. My education was in like a BA in Germany. While I was studying in this BA, I did an exchange semester in sustainable fashion in Kolding in the design school in Denmark. And while we were working on like a fashion collection, I found pigment-producing bacteria. And in the area, there was another science university, and I reached out to a professor there and asked her if she could teach me the basics of working with bacteria, because I've never done it before and I also wouldn't know how to start. And she did, and she was incredible. Danielle Wilde, wonderful educator. She taught me the basics, but also taught me how important it is to share knowledge, to share education. And she was really like at the forefront of still where I am now and the morals that I also have in my practice. So she taught me this, and I went back to Germany to build up a laboratory myself and continue with my researches. And back then, I tried to bridge collaborations with scientists or with other laboratories around me. And it was 8 years ago, so biodesign wasn't really a thing yet, and bacteria in design, not at all. People were more disgusted by it than intrigued. A lot has changed since then. Now people are really excited by the prospect of growing material with microorganisms. So yeah, partnerships back then were really difficult. So I continued working on it, and I went to study in my MA in London, because London was a little bit further in material experimentation and material sciences. So there I had access to laboratories and to actually work with scientists together as well on continuing my practice. And it was incredible to have these partnerships and learn from the scientists. And while I have been studying the microorganisms for years and understood their way of growing, I learned so much more with the accessibility to their knowledge. So that's kind of my like studying education, but it was quite obvious that regenerative practices were not a big part of the curriculum in these universities. So there was always a like a self-initiative and a self-drive that you have to bring. And there it's really nice to be able to reach out to institutions, to bridge partnerships, for example, with the Creatives for a Future program, where you can get support in continuing this education outside of higher education. And because it is difficult to find this education, this is again why I'm part of the community laboratory to make this accessible. And while, for example, workshops with pigment-producing bacteria in other laboratories can be quite expensive, we're really trying to keep it as low as possible. So we're talking about £30. It's really affordable. And also lab accessibility. So from the background of knowledge not being as accessible as it should be, especially in the universities that I have attended, it's not a given. So there still needs to be, even in a design education, self-initiative in learning more.
Thank you for sharing. And I think what highlights is, again, your purpose, what's really driven you and your passion, but also appreciate you're not a gatekeeper, you know, because you really care about the subject matter. You want to share it, you want to collaborate. And I think that's a really big part, because sometimes innovation happens, and I appreciate, you know, you've worked so hard and you're like, this was my journey, everyone should go through this. No, you're like, this was my journey and I don't want anyone else to feel this. So I want this to be accessible, I want it to be affordable, because the mission in hand is really important. So thank you for being a collaborator and being open, because I'm sure through you people are going to learn more as well and sharing that knowledge. So brilliant work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm giving some sad stories at the beginning, but there is hope at the end. Yeah, because what Charlotte, she mentioned just that at least she had access to education. In some countries, there is no access to education. I'm one of them. I was lucky I could finish college, but even during college, because of the conflict or because of uncertainty, I lost 3 years of my education time because I couldn't go to school. So that moved me from studying telecommunication, because during these 3 years, I know what we were facing when it comes to water. And then I realized, after starting volunteering, and I was lucky, which is the hope, that I could engage with a lot of people who opened the door for me and support me to start my new journey. And when I was mentioning I want to start in water, and I was afraid because I didn't have technical background. Sometimes you think that water is only technical. And one of my friends, I cannot say boss or manager, because at the end he supported me a lot and tell me that you can apply for water management. This is different perspective. You don't need to be a technical person. You don't need to be doing modeling to do that, but just to understand the system. And you are coming from a community that understanding the system well. So I started my journey from there. I applied for IHE. I was one of the lucky people who accepted in scholarship, which is Swarovski Foundation is supporting IHE to have this kind of scholarship, to have people like me to study, to understand, and be part of the people who can support their community back again. Yes, I'm based in the Netherlands, but I'm working for my country, for my region, to have them the knowledge and support them through capacity development, through publishing or sharing with them the opportunities to have the knowledge I had and the opportunity that I had for them as well. So this is one of the points I want to share, but in the same time, just let's keep in mind that education, just this is my last message, that is not accessible by everyone. We need to support these communities. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And thank you for sharing and, knowing as well what you had to go through to even stop the access. It is a privilege. Education, having that access is a privilege. And to see that, how can we make this more accessible and engaging, I think that's so important. So you do really highlight a big part of how can we make sure these resources and these opportunities are available. So thank you so much for sharing and keeping your optimism and showing that actually you don't need to have an engineering background. You still can care about water in a different way. So well done to you. Thank you. So I want to dive a bit deeper in all of the work that you're doing, because it's all really essential. So Raquel, I come to you first. Again, talking about the communities, and we say our partnership with the water school, and the many kids that we've reached and connected with the community. Can you tell us a bit more about, again, that spark for that community, whether it was education or there was an implementation that you're like, right, this is great. Hopefully we can maybe replicate in other places, also learning. Please share.
Yes, so we're 10 years in now, so we had phases, right? So we designed an approach, and we're testing. We keep testing. We're always testing. And we're somehow consolidated on how we get in communities and what we do. So we first started, we always get into a community through the school. So the school is our base, is the center where we go. We bring our methodology, our education. In the beginning, it was us as a team coming in and doing everything and testing and seeing if it makes sense and designing it to be really contextualized. It's a really interesting methodology. It's like 4 modules, like water and me, water my house and the school, then water in my community. It's where we also bring action plans and do things together, and then we go to water and the planet and the Amazon. So that's how we start. And from this, through the school, we do this action plan and we bring the whole community in to make something together. And this is where, so we enter with the knowledge, and this knowledge somehow starts changing attitudes. And then we want that the knowledge influences practice, right? But sometimes to influence practice, you need some infrastructure. So I always use the most simple example is that one of the activities we're talking about washing hands, right? But still, and this is even with all of our efforts, we are in 69. Actually, we reached 71 schools only in this region. Still more 55. I need to see the number exactly. Still 55 schools don't have water, don't have bathroom, don't have anything. So in these action plans, we actually sometimes have to choose with the community what to do. And yeah, in the beginning, we thought we would only do hand washing stations or whatever. In the end, we had to build schools. So we had already built 12 schools in this region. In others, we had to renovate, and some others we built access to water, bringing water either from the river or from boreholes. So I think sometimes we think about the Amazon, like 20% of the water is in the Amazon. It's like, wow. But actually, it's not really like this. The communities don't have access to safe water most of the time, or they drink water directly from the river, which is a problem when these communities actually have floating houses that the sewage goes directly to the river. So there's a lot of issues related. And you can actually, it's hard for us to come and talk about treat your water if there's no means to it. So education is a door that opens a much bigger space for working different themes. And in this sense, for example, the sewage example I was giving, it's very hard for us to just say just treat your water if there's no solution about it. So in the region, there's this type of communities that the water, they stay 6 months underwater and 6 months in very dry, and the water is like they have to walk kilometers to get to the water. In this scenario, we searched so much for innovations for sewage system in school, because we built schools and we wanted the schools to have bathrooms, right? But what is the system to treat this water in the bathroom? So sometimes the sewage. So I'm really happy that, for example, our partnership it's continued for so long, because we had time to actually develop these solutions and think together with the community what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. and we were testing. So we now have developed some innovations that make sense for the reality, but it's definitely not something that it's so, I cannot come with a package, and say, like, let's do this. So it's really experimenting and being in relation, and this is what brings us the answers, and being flexible and seeing what comes up. We also had a lot of, not a lot, but like some things that we tested and they didn't work.
Right.
And then we say, okay, let's do differently, and then we made it right. So this is a bit of our methodology that is not a fixed methodology. It's about being flexible and being in relation and seeing what is the need, what comes. And because of that, I think communities started trusting us so much. So this is a region, I think, just like in many others, that so many people have already went there and say, like, let's help, blah, blah, blah. But people, they don't believe that that much on that anymore, because so many things have gone wrong and was just promises, like very interventions that were just like one time and left. And I think because of that, we had that continuity and that work. We had really being able to get people's trust. And now we don't have to showcase the project anymore. Like, they ask us, they come to us. So it's very fulfilling to see all this happening.
No, I appreciate that. And I think it highlights as well, we appreciate the partnership as well, where, again, that commitment that you are going to the community, you are testing, and again, kind of links to that creativity aspect of trying to have that innovation, engineering, consideration, all of those things, and working with the community. And I'm glad that, there was a solution that hopefully either helps design maybe other places, or you share that knowledge. And I know that as well, you're an example for the municipality where they're like, oh, this is great, because sometimes you need grant funding or you need funding to test, right?
Exactly.
And so by being able to do that, it sets an example and hopefully supports other communities as well. So thank you for your perseverance and then continuing to work with the community so well.
Yeah, and just to add, that's actually what happened. So the municipality is now using our education methodology as their own methodology, and they're using some of our innovations to bring to other communities. So it's like, yes.
Wonderful. And that's scale. That's what we want. Again, by not holding, being a gatekeeper to that information or knowledge, sharing that. So well done. Again, the perseverance is good. It shows time. It takes time to build trust and building all of that. So thank you. I'm going to come to you, Charlotte, in a moment, but I want to go to Sundus because I want to talk about that aspect of like resilience and water management, and that aspect that Raquel talked about, how it is working with the communities. Again, when we think about IHE Delft and the access, and not only from your own personal experience, could you share with us those sort of examples of how maybe some of the students or your peers are connecting with this issue and maybe finding those innovations and solutions and maybe their stories as well?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for passing for me, because I was very eager to highlight this point. And just give some numbers for IHE, because we are a very big let's say group from IHE alumni, and we are 25,000 students from IHE graduate from IHE. So you can imagine how the big network is. This is how we connect to different aspects and communities, because once you have the pen, you will go to a country, you want to work there, you will have someone who will recognize you and will support you and do something. I will back again to students. At IHE, we believe in applied research. So we encourage our students, I am part of these students 2 years ago, that we do research in our countries if possible. And sometimes we encourage organizations like Raquel to come to us, give us a case, if you have, that we can encourage our students to do that for you, and as part of their MSc, and in the same time will help you to understand engaging, especially if they are from the country, they are more committed. They can see what we cannot see I could see what is there in Iraq, what is there in my city when I was doing my research, rather than a person from other region, even from other governorates, who couldn't see what I know in the system. So this is how we try at IHE doing applied research, and at the same time, peer-to-peer like kind of exchange. So I learn a lot from studying at IHE in water management and governance, but in the same time, I had more than 30 students in the same class from more than 15 countries, other than my country, that I learned how the water management work in India or Uganda or Liberia. So I was linked of what I know about water from my colleagues in the same time where I learned about water from the classes I was having. So this is very important. At the same time, we are building like kind of interdisciplinary approach. So we are not only like focusing on like social aspect or technical aspect. We are engaging different aspects in the same time. Like as a water manager studying, we engage with like hydrology or river basin modeling people or students or colleagues to convince them that water management is important, and they will convince us that that data and like science and modeling is important to your decision making. So it's like this kind of engagement is very important, but because at the end, when you go to real world, you will need to this kind of, let's say, knowledge, because I will go as a water management and governance, and when a technical person come with like simulation, I need to understand with this simulation and believe in them. At the same time, they should believe in us that we can support them to make a right decision. So this is how we try to engage. I will give one example because I met the person here in the conference. She is a legend at IHE. If you go to IHE, you will see her picture on the wall. We have like a very nice wall for IHE award. And she won the IHE award alumni last year. I will just read it because I don't want to forget her, like what she is doing. She's amazing. So she is Florence Adongo, sorry, my pronunciation. And she is an example because she worked very hard, and she was like the first woman become a director of water resource management at Uganda in the Ministry of Water and Environment. But in the same time, she pushed it more, and as a Nile Basin initiative, having a female as a general director is something, and she did that. And she's with us here in the conference, so if you pass by her, see her, like give her a plus because she did an amazing job. It's not an easy being a female in this field. And like just, I will quote one quote because I met her like 2 days ago. I was having a very nice conversation with her, and I tried to have a quote from her because she's an amazing person. It's like, it's related to women in the same time, like, yeah, sometimes being a female in the field is not easy. So I would just have 2 quotes. Women must have opportunity to influence decisions that affect their lives and community. As a woman, you are the household who is handling water. If you are a housewife, if you are working as engineer, water manager, just passing by, you are like the household manager for water everywhere as a female. A second point is more practical. She mentioned that like when I joined the sector, I bring the women perspective, how they influence the decision making. And like she said, like at that time, I changed the men by asking questions, the men perspective, dominant kind of influence by being a female to ask a different kind of way of questions. So let's be kind of, let's say, equity, but in the same time, like more engaging. It's not only one like person or one gender or whatever you name it, dominant. We need to be engaging. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for uplifting another story as well. And I think that goes back to collaboration and partnership. How can we celebrate each other in this space when, yes, it can be challenging and difficult, and there may be times we try things and it may not work, but when it works, let's take that moment to celebrate and champion each other. I think that's so essential. So thank you so much for sharing that. So coming to you, Charlotte, tell us more about the beauty you were talking about. Get us inspired and excited about the same beauty you see.
Yes, I'm very happy to do that. Okay, so first the introduction to bacteria dye or dye in the fashion industry in general. I'm just going to keep this really short, but the fashion industry is one of the 3 most polluting industries in the world. We know that. Water is a big part of that. So just as an example, to dye one t-shirt, let's say, it needs to go through a couple of baths, of water baths. So in the beginning, it needs to be treated with chemicals to make the dye stick to the garments and to the fibers. That's like the mordants. It then goes to a couple of run-throughs of the dye bath itself, and in order to get like really vibrant colors, this can be multiple dye baths. And then in the end, the dye has to be washed out again. So another run-through of water. So a lot of water is used in this process, and a lot of water is also afterwards, when it gets discarded, it's full with chemicals, so it does pollute water streams. In comparison to this, bacteria dye saves a lot of water, and it doesn't use chemicals in the process. So when we talk about water, about energy, and about CO2 emissions, bacteria dye is around 1/3 of what is being used in the fashion industry, where petrochemicals are at the base of dyes. And even in comparison to other natural dyes, such as plant dyes, bacteria doesn't need water to grow plants. So even there, it saves a lot of water. And talking about the beauty of it, I'm working in a way with the bacteria where I'm looking into a co-designing process. So I don't just harvest the pigment and use them as a silk screen print, for example, or in a dye bath. So I'm looking into how this material innovation can not only exchange what we have right now, but also be at the forefront of a new aesthetic. And part of this new aesthetic is co-designing with the bacteria. So while I am looking into creating, let's say, repetitive stripe patterns or other kind of patterns, I always give, or like I have to give, I can't take fully control over the outcome. The bacteria is part of the outcome. And I think that's beautiful. So for 8 years, whenever I go into the laboratory and the dye circle is completed after around 3 to 5 days, I get really excited to see what has happened, what has come out. I can make one pattern 3 times, and 3 times I can assure you it will look different. And I think that's really beautiful. That's like the bacteria is taking part of the design process, and it's also a communicator. It is something invisible that is making something visible. It's something microbial and small, and it's making this huge. So I think there is like a lot of metaphors and a lot of stories only in these things as well. I understand that with my practice, I'm not exactly right at the point where people with water insecurities live and need aid. However, I know that I have impact to the people that are in big corporations and big fashion industries, and I know that I can address them. I'm just in my practice working by myself. I don't have a team. I have a team in the laboratory, but when it comes to bacteria dye, I'm working by myself. But I am giving workshops to big corporations. And one of the last workshops that I've done was with a global sportswear brand, a huge brand, everyone knows them. And they are really interested in incorporating alternative dye techniques into their production processes. But they don't understand how to at all, because there are so many different ways of doing this. So what we did is I dyed a couple of textiles for them, a little bit of communication, the logo and all of this, but I also invited them to come to the laboratory, and we did a workshop together. And it was really, really nice to work with them and really interesting because first of all, they got super excited about it. They saw the beauty of the bacteria. They saw the strength of a microorganism, the co-designing processes. They loved it. But also what they learned is that they completely have to change their language of speaking about the production processes. They have to look into a different timeline. They have all of their seasons and production due dates and production, all of these timelines, the expectations of the outcomes, the language around it. So many more things need to be re-educated. And I think that first of all, beauty is a big part of this, and second of all, this is where I try to have a big impact for innovation and for hopefully system change.
Well, absolutely you are, because I think what you're highlighting here is, whilst you said you're not working in areas that may, people may not have lack of access to water, we know it contributes. If, for example, overproduction, overconsumption, we know it has an issue to what's happening in climate, what's happening to our nature, and what you're saying here is actually if we change our behavior on how we produce and consume, that will have a knock-on effect for communities that you may not even see. Yeah. And also how powerful, and you all three are shown this, as individual voices, you're just charging forward. And, you're given the example of working with a big corporate and how you've inspired them to think a bit differently. I think it just shows that whilst I appreciate there's such a big, issue that we're having to address, and it can sit heavy on our shoulders, you're saying at least if I can do this one bit, it can have then hopefully another impact elsewhere. And I think that goes back to being genuine and trying to be accountable. I am conscious of time, and I do want to open to questions, and I do want to show the video as well. But before that, maybe if I just ask the panelists, maybe for some remarks that maybe you really want to get across to the audience, that you feel that you just are urging that, what would your message be?
I think just a message around impact and what impact might be, because this became like this buzzword, impact, and you want, especially sometimes for funders or for reports and everything, people want numbers. Like we do have numbers, like 10,000 students, 1,300 teachers trained and all this. But in the end, there's a good one. 30% of the schools that we work in, the first bathroom of the whole community was the one in the school. So we have these numbers or whatever, but in the end, the stories and the stories of change makes it so much more relevant and even like understandable. So even like in this context that we work, where the communities are so far away, so expensive to get there. You've seen like you have to go by boat, and takes time, takes effort, and the communities are really small. And this is one of the reasons why they are in the situation that they are. And in this sense, sometimes we have to rethink what impact is, so we actually get to the places that the need is more, and how we communicate it and how we approach it. So I think that makes a lot of sense for what we are doing in the Amazon, but also for many other contexts that we work in. And basically also like pay more attention to the Amazon. That's my big, I like to represent that part of the world. And I'm so open to exchange about anything you're interested on.
And it's interesting with COP being in Brazil, we do need to bring that attention to the Amazon. So I think everyone's coming to your calling that we need to bring some attention to the Amazon. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe because you mentioned this is not my final message, but I want to highlight because you are mentioning local communities. It's very important that, like in any initiative, we need to think that they know much than us, even if we are studying from Netherlands, from IHE, and I have a master in water management, but they are the water managers in their community. They know the system better than me. They know what is the solution before even I study water management from their grandfathers. They know how to fetch water and access to water, how to access to water, how to solve solution. They are very adaptive to their local context. And as organizations, entity, when we go there, we need to remember that they know more than us, even with our background, let's say research background or whatever. This is make the impact more important. Impact is not about the donor want. Impact is what is happening on the ground. Can I say maybe?
Absolutely. And can I just echo that? I think that's so
Amazing.
important, because exactly that, and we need to be humble. I think I saw when I went to one of the other talks, they talk about ego and eco, how we just need to move away from what we think we may know, but actually listening and actually being part of the ecosystem and exchanging. And that's the most humbling experience that we can actually take.
Yeah.
But do you want to go with your example then?
Maybe if you want to hear a very nice story about impact, search about the lady who won the Nobel Prize in 2004 from Kenya, Wangari Maathai. She started planting a tree and she ended up with the prize and a green belt in whole Kenya. So this is a one story. My final message maybe will be a little bit sensitive because I came from a vulnerable community, so highlighting the importance of supporting vulnerable communities is very important for me. So, and sometimes development agencies come to only focusing on infrastructure, like rehabilitate this treatment plan, rebuild the network, having build dig a well or something. But we need to think about education. We need to invest in people. Systems is not only infrastructure or technical systems. I did my research in social technical system. I interviewed hundreds of people through my work and through my research. And I realized at the end is having an infrastructure without someone knows how this infrastructure work is meaningless. So we need to invest in education, having access to education. At the end, a very final message, and sometimes we forgot this one, that as a young generation, we need not only support, we need to give a space. So the leader today, they need to know that us, the new generation, will be the next leaders. So please invest in us, and at the same time, we are investing in ourselves. So we are not waiting, but at the same time, we need support. And don't forget the vulnerable community. They are all over the world, and it's happening on the ground now, and we need to think about them as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really important. Absolutely. How do we make sure we empower the next generation? Because they're going to be the future leaders, and we've got to really support them. And then maybe talking about the next generation. Charlotte, your comment.
Thank you so much. The last remarks were incredible. And the only thing that I want to add is almost profound, but I would say we have been talking about cross-disciplinary work and that it's important to work together. And I would almost just say, give a little bit of homework and say, if you have the opportunity, look into your local communities and pick a workshop of something that you have never done before. Take a friend and go there.
I like that. Mm-hmm. I like that homework, which is great. We will open the floor to questions, reflections, and remarks, but we do want to share the Water School 25-year anniversary video. Hopefully that works. Perfect. Do I need to click anything, or will you? Wonderful. Magic.
Water, not only essential for life, but also to the Swarovski Foundation's mission to promote sustainable livelihoods through education to reduce inequality. To achieve this, we focus on 3 key areas: equity, creativity, and water. Access to clean water and education is central to our commitment to lasting, sustainable impact. That's why we channel this ethos into the Swarovski Foundation Water School, with this year marking 25 years of impact. The Water School is a global initiative aimed at educating young people on sustainable practices to address their local water challenges and improve water security, equipping and uniting generations to safeguard water for a sustainable future. We've engaged with over 2,500 schools collaborated with over 23,000 teachers, educated over 800,000 young people to become advocates for water security in their communities, and advance partnerships across charities, schools, local authorities, the private sector, and communities. Our journey began in 2000, the Austrian mountains, where we engaged young people and their communities in vital conversations around the value of water. From this evolved a global mission to inspire advocates for change. As the Water School program evolves, it continues to advance education and WASH infrastructure for young people and communities globally to improve water security. At the Swarovski Foundation, we don't just fund initiatives. We promote collaboration, build networks, and provide vital support and resources to the global organizations we partner with. 25 years isn't just a milestone, it's a call to action. Because at the Swarovski Foundation, we believe in creating drops of knowledge for rivers of change.
Thank you very much. Can we just give one round of applause for the panelists?
You're amazing.
And this is the time that we want to open the floor to yourselves. I don't know if there's any comments here in person or if there are any comments online. So let me first ask here in the room. I see there's a hand there. I think a mic's coming to you. Thank you.
Yeah, hello. I just want to start by saying thank you for this presentation. My name is Morten, and I'm working with a small NGO on Bornholm in the Baltic Sea. And exactly these community building things that you were touching on is exactly what we're working on. So it was very inspiring for me, and I hope that I could talk to some of you afterwards, because I think that the project that I'm working on right now could collaborate with some of your thoughts. So thank you for an inspiring talk.
Thank you, and thank you. This is exactly what we want to do, networks. I love it. Call to action, I like it. Great. Any other comments or questions? We have one here. Thank you. The mic's coming to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is John Akudago, and I work for Habitat for Humanity International. I'm really impressed to hear from the three of you what you have actually done as a change to your communities and the world. And I wanted to say, you are the future generation leaders, and you've already started. And so that is well done. My question goes to the Amazon work that you've done. We learned that when we go to the communities, we should know that they have knowledge more than us. And I was just wondering if you could share maybe some of your experiences, especially we are talking about climate and emissions. And Amazon forest is one of the, even if you go to the remotest village, everybody hears about them. Were there some lessons that you learned from the communities that you want to share with the audience here so that we can also pick and send to other areas? And then with the lab person, I would want to also connect you with somebody who is actually working on dyes. And if you want to collaborate further, you'll be more than happy to, that person will be more than happy to work with you as well. Thank you.
Wonderful. I love that. Again, really concrete question, but also connection. Love it.
Thank you so much for the question. It's hard to pick one. There's so much we learn. And I think it's not something so concrete, but what we have learned more than everything is like how to do things together, like the way the communities work. So there's this it's a word, it's mutirão, that the communities in the Amazon, they do. That is basically when you have a plantation to be done, they have this tradition of putting everybody together to work together, and you have to have good food, and that brings people together, and everybody works so hard for that one family. And I think everything we do, and we invite people to do, we kind of bring this way of working. So, for example, when we have to build a school, because they chose to build a school, we usually do this type of mutirão for a whole week. We provide the good food, and we do the work exactly the way traditionally they put people together to work. So more than like a specific innovation, it's like how we work together, or how we bring the innovation, like people like to use this innovation, but it's basically like what they have been doing already for so long. So we kind of connect whatever we're bringing to the way they do, you know. And one thing that I forgot to say when I say like, stories are more important than numbers. So for example, we train teachers to use our methodology, right? So right now in our team, the team that leads the project are the teachers that were first trained 10 years ago. And they are the teachers training other teachers. Actually, they're today, right now, doing a teacher's training. So this is a way that, again, it's not an innovation, but of course, it makes so much more sense for them to incorporate it and lead this, you know. And then I could have other examples of like innovations for sewage system and the way they build the schools and all this, but I think the soft part, like the way we do, it's harder to incorporate than innovation, and it's more important. It makes the base for everything to happen, you know.
Thank you, Raquel. I see there's some questions, and I clearly need my glasses, so I'm going to walk more closely to the screen. Okay, perfect. So one of the comments is, thank you for all your presentations. Thank you, Swarovski Foundation, for making impact through Water School. I'm happy that our mayor from South Africa, Mbola, is in attendance, and I hope she will look into a partnership with you. Charlotte, I never thought dye could have so much impact on water. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your reflections. Thank you. Whilst there may be more questions that may be coming through, or comments, is there anything else from the room? And what I'll do as well is, if I go to the last one, again, what we can do is take that time, maybe just to then meet and talk in person. So we'll definitely make time for that. So maybe if I then come to the closing of this session. The first, I want to say thank you for the inspiring voices, because you've shared examples of what it is for you and your purpose, what your story is, and I think those human stories connect us, but also you've connected to communities and you've shared your knowledge and you've increased it tenfold. So a huge thank you to you all for making that moment. So again, I want to give another round of applause to our amazing panelists. I also want to say thank you to, obviously, the organization of the World Water Conference, for you all here today. Because again, without this network, without these conversations, and as well to the volunteers and who's all supporting us to make this happen, we really appreciate, because again, we don't take this platform for granted. And we hope that you've just really heard the amazing stories from our partners that we truly believe in. But again, we want you to get involved, expand your network. So again, we will take time to connect in person. But again, if you do follow the QR code, it goes to the foundation's platforms. Again, connect with us, conversate with us. We would love to hear from you. But I guess I want to take maybe 3 aspects of, I think there are 3 things I want to maybe share that I've taken from this conversation. The first is consistency drives impact. We've heard how time is so important, that when we work in communities or we work in schools or we work in partnership, that may take time for us to do that. And so the building the trust, that relationship, but consistency and trusting the process, trusting that maybe you try and model, it may not work. Let's take a learning and adapt. So I think that's the first thing that hopefully we can take with us of, consistency drives impact. The second is collaboration. I think what you've heard here is 3 very different stories, but they come together again of how we can address water and water security. But I think that's really essential for us to consider those collaborations does work. And then obviously, I think the last thing is really important is humanizing. Yes, we have the numbers we talked about, but humanizing the story is so essential that we hear the voices and that we actually advocate for those voices. So those may be my 3 takeaways, but I see we actually have more comments now as well. Okay, so going to the question of what action will you take to advance water security and climate resilience through education, creativity, communication, community engagement in your network. Here are some of the things that have been shared. And again, I feel like some of them may be in the room, which is wonderful. I love this. Working on topics related to water and environment that nobody tackles and bringing the spotlight. For example, I can see as well, and now it's laundry. Half the population, predominantly women, do it by hand and in unsafe conditions. And I remember when I spoke to this particular colleague, you shared with me a statistic that on average it takes 3 hours each day to actually do laundry. Think about the time and the capacity to do that. So definitely let's bring some light to these important issues as well. Aspects of working hard against disinformation. I can recognize that, when we've got so much coming through our phones and through technology, how do we actually make sure that we break that disinformation? And I think something that has been said by the panelists, and please do add, but also what we do at the foundation is we have to verify our sources. I think that's really important. Who is saying it? Going to reliable sources, I think is really essential so that we can hopefully break that disinformation and actually share that information that hopefully empowers individuals. Another aspect is continue to dedicate myself to work through the organization. I founded Frank Water. Brilliant. We create impact through education, direct community action, equity, and creativity. I love those alignment to values that we're saying, but also should be really proud of obviously the work that Frank Water does as well. Work to promote traditional practices that promote water resources protection and management. And I think that really highlights to what you were saying, right? How do we hear from indigenous communities, those have been on the land for thousands of years? How can we protect and preserve it? I think absolutely. Continue to work with indigenous communities to advance their rights, interests, and priorities. Absolutely. I think, got thumbs up from Raquel. It's actually a question, where can we find the methodologies for Amazonia education?
I think the easiest way is connect to me through my name on LinkedIn, and I guide you through. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to to say exactly the website, but it's online.
Brilliant. And I think that may be a takeaway action. Please connect with these wonderful panelists on LinkedIn or even afterwards as well. Another one was community conversations on the role and importance of water vis-a-vis ongoing climatic unpredictability and changes, promote ecosystem restoration approaches as a tool for enhancing water resilience. Absolutely. The water issue isn't just a new issue. This has been going on for, again, centuries. How do we make sure that we're adapting ourselves, again, learning in new ways, whilst also honoring the traditional ways as well? So how do we build that resilience? Another one is I'm going to familiarize myself with global strategies and perspectives dealing with water challenges and use that knowledge to best address and improve water accessibility and quality in my community. I think that's such a really great takeaway. I think we all can. We come to this conference so that we can not only exchange network, but learn. I can personally say for myself, hearing stories, connecting with individuals, I'm learning, and I hope I take that on and share that with my wonderful colleagues as well. I should also highlight, I've got Head of Water, Clements, here as well. If he does a little wave, you'll see. Please also connect with him too. He's been dedicated in this work as well. So again, I use the saying, it takes a village to make change. And I think this is just examples of that. Whilst we can do our individual part, which is so important, how do we connect with one another? I don't know if there's any lasting comments, but I think then we are good to close. So for those online, whilst we may not be able to connect afterwards, please connect on LinkedIn. We would love to connect further. Thank you very much for joining. For those in person, let's definitely come together and connect and discuss. And I just want to say again, thank you so much. Oh, Sundus.
No, it's because like this about like climate change come to my heart, because sometimes we think climate change is only like a kind of natural thing is happening, but just don't forget that it's our influence as well as a human. We need to think twice what we are doing with how affect and make climate change more severe. And final word, she was thanking us all the time, and we need to thank her with a plus.
Yes.
So like moderating the session, make this session happen, and with Clemens as well. So maybe another.
Oh, yes, you can. Thank you. I love that.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. This is it. We empower each other. I love that. So thank you again for everyone, and look forward to connecting. And round of applause to you guys too. Thank you.